Aiden Hale, that's the name of the Nashville shooter. The way that the media and the police are misgendering and dead naming Aiden is quite concerning.
I'm perfectly fine with banning people who suffer from gender dysphoria from purchasing weapons. That seems to me a pretty significant symptom of an underlying mental malaise that could theoretically be a problem.
What is up, you guys? To address the pink elephant in the room, I have not uploaded on this channel in about a month, which is the longest I've ever gone since the 7 years that I've been doing this, that I have been sort of MIA. I was active on my other socials, of course, did a few podcasts on the second channel, but you know, my instinct was to come on here and say sorry for that, but I'm actually not sorry because I needed that recharging time. You guys know that a lot of the content we cover on this channel can be dark AF. This video is one of them, and I just needed a month to kind of like party and see friends and enjoy life, and I did it and I feel amazing, so let's just get right into it. And it's kind of ironic because one of the reasons I didn't upload for a month was because I felt as though trans discourse specifically and like the politics surrounding like the trans topic had just kind of reached a level of toxic that was so incongruent with my life, which is just fun and lighthearted, and it just felt icky to like come on here and talk about it. And then of course it got even worse than when I took my break with Audrey Hale, the trans shooter in Nashville. And we need to talk about this. It's all people want me to talk about. It's all I really want to talk about. So let's get into it. Unless you've been living under a rock, you know that there was a disgusting tragedy in Nashville. Now, first things first, there's a lot of hoopla and politics surrounding this tragedy, which we're going to get into and we're going to break down step by step. But the first thing I want to say is I haven't heard anyone using the words Christian hate crime in regards to this tragedy. And to me, if it was any other group of people, that would be a no-brainer. If it was a mosque, if it was a gay club, I mean, we've seen incidents at those types of places and they're rightfully called hate crimes. This to me was a Christian hate crime. So I just want to put it out there. You know, I'm not religious. I'm not Christian. I don't relate to being Christian in any way, but you'd have to be blind to not see that that is one of the last few groups that you can sort of launch hate at and escape consequences for it. That's just a fact. So my heart is with the Christian community in Nashville first and foremost, and obviously the parents of these children that lost their lives to this disgusting demon that is now burning in hell. And it's really an interesting place in society when immediately when we hear about a mass shooting, when we hear about a tragedy like this or a violent crime of some sort, everyone starts sort of like racing to find out the identity of the shooter because that just matters so much in today's climate, right? Was the shooter trans? Was the shooter black? Was the shooter a white Christian male? Was it... People want to know who to blame. We are tribal beings and we want to place the blame on a group of people. We want to place the blame on anything. There are people that are placing the blame on hunks of metal, aka guns. People are becoming gun grabbers all of a sudden on, you know, the side of the political aisle that normally are not gun grabbers. There's a lot of BS happening. People are blaming the fact that Audrey was on testosterone, even though I have seen zero evidence of that. I have not seen this person's prescription and it definitely doesn't look like this person has been masculinized. Testosterone is a very powerful drug, and usually when biological females are on it, they're like 2 months in and have a full beard, basically. Like it's I don't personally think this person was on testosterone, and even so, it's like a lot of people are on testosterone and don't go on mass killing sprees. You know what I mean? The only evidence I have seen of this shooter being trans in any sense of the word that makes sense to me as a trans woman who has transitioned is that she had he, him pronouns in her bio. Again, I haven't seen any like masculinization in any of the pictures. It doesn't look like there was a transition that took place at all. So I guess, you know, this is where the left messed up with self-ID, right? Anyone can be trans now. So by their standards, now we have to own that. That was a trans person, despite just having pronouns in their bio like every other white liberal on the planet. Cool. Now we have to take that person on as one of us, right? But the infantilization and the sort of victimization of the shooter at the hands of the media and the LGBT community has been amazing. And I want to address the ways in which the right is abusing this tragedy as well and using it in ways that are disgusting as well. But let's start with the left.
I wonder if the parents of the victims of the Nashville shooting today would still have their children if these trans bills in Tennessee were never a thing. I'm not a parent, but if I were, I'd be real mad at the government.
And if you think no one's victimizing this shooter. Trans activists showed up to the Tennessee Capitol and held up 7 fingers to represent 7 victims of this incident, including Audrey Hale, the person who did it. Let's watch.
Every death is a tragedy, y'all. It's 7 lives.
I'd say there were 7 victims.
The New York Post, Nashville shooter Audrey Hale was heartbroken over death of friend she was infatuated with. Why are we victimizing this hoe? Raise your hand if you've ever experienced heartbreak. Raise your hand if you've ever been in the fetal position, so effed up over a man or a woman or whatever you're interested in that you don't think you can go on in life anymore. You don't think life is worth living. You have dark thoughts. And also raise your hand if you didn't go shoot up a school and take kids out, right? Like, I don't know why this has to even be a headline, victimizing this. Nashville mass shooter Audrey Hale was rejected by her Christian parents who couldn't accept she was gay and trans. Okay, cool. I have half my family that's disowned me for being trans. Fun fact. Doesn't make me want to go hurt anyone. People on the left in particular are saying, well, what do you expect to happen, right? There are all these anti-trans laws happening in Tennessee. Okay, so I'm just going to put this out there for anyone who needs to hear it. Clearly a lot of people, because I've seen this sentiment. Oh, of course there's going to be, violent incidents. Look at all these anti-trans, anti-drag laws in Tennessee. So because there are laws that exist against sterilizing children, that means you should take them out? Like, I don't understand. Again, I lived in California my entire life, and if I made a video about the plethora of laws I disagreed with in the state I was living in at that time, I think it would be like a 2-hour documentary. So not really seeing the connection here. What we do need to talk about is the fact that people in this community are defending the shooter and more upset about misgendering the shooter than the fact that the shooter did what the shooter did.
Aiden Hale, that's the name of the Nashville shooter. This video is about to be very uncomfortable for a lot of us. It's very uncomfortable for me to talk about, but we need to talk about it. Aiden did a very horrendous thing. Period, point blank. We need pew pew reform in our country. But the way that the media and the police are misgendering and dead naming Aiden is quite concerning. It's also concerning that I had to go to the Telegraph from UK to actually get Aiden's chosen name. It's upsetting that constantly it is she, her pronouns. That is incredibly frustrating because even though they did this horrible thing does not mean that we get to do those things. That's a boundary, and we can hold people accountable without being transphobic, even for some of the most horrendous things. So while you're watching this, also watch for transphobia because that's very clearly coming out.
Girl, shut the fuck up. I don't know who needs to hear this, but misgendering is the least of what should happen to someone that does what Audrey Hale did. The least. I'm sitting over here hoping that her sentencing in hell is for eternity, and this person is up here, we should not be transphobic, and I can't believe I had to go to a website from the UK to find her name. You're stupid. When I hear of a tragedy like this, the last thing on my mind is trans rights. Like, it doesn't even come into the bubble, right? Because that's the thing about being an LGBT cultist and just being like a person who happens to be an L, a G, or B, or a T, right? Is that like I'm like in the real world and like I have friends who have kids and like I'm around people and like I leave my house for reasons other than like screaming at the state capitol and I get offline sometimes. So like the reality of like a bunch of kids getting shot is deeply disturbing to me, a lot more disturbing than misgendering. Get off the internet. The White House press secretary said that their hearts are with the trans community at this time.
Our hearts go out to the trans community as they are under attack.
How about the families of the kids? I gotta tell you, I know if I'm this over the trans stuff, I can't imagine how the average person feels. Like further than over it. Like I'm so over it, I'm under it constantly. It's suffocating. Like it's disgusting. And not that literally any of this is about me right now, but I do have to somewhat address the fact that it's an interesting time to be sort of like the face of like trans gun ownership right now. Obviously, like just a few weeks ago, I went viral for holding a gun in a bikini picture. So like imagine my GMs, imagine my mentions during this time. Insane. But I want to say that no matter what happens out in the world, my principles are not shaken. And it's been very interesting watching on the conservative side, people's principles being shifting up a little bit. Suddenly, I'm seeing a lot of conservatives on Twitter talk about how red flag laws might be appropriate and that people who are trans or people who have gender dysphoria shouldn't be allowed to own guns. We have Ben Shapiro. Let's watch that.
I'm perfectly fine with banning people who suffer from gender dysphoria from purchasing weapons. That seems to me a pretty significant symptom of an underlying mental malaise that could theoretically be a problem in terms of owning firearms. But I don't think the left believes the same thing.
Really interesting. So Ben Shapiro, who has, throughout his career opposed red flag laws and has supposedly been so pro 2A. I want to say also, as someone who is truly pro 2A, if you are pro 2A and you put a but after that sentence, you're not pro 2A. And I don't know what kind of conservative is going to fix his mouth, Ben Shapiro, to be on camera saying, yes, the government should decide who is mentally ill enough to not own a gun. Yeah, because that'll never be abused. I'm sure it could never be a slippery slope into believing that being a conservative is a mental illness, or that voting for Trump is a mental illness, right? Or that believing in God is a mental illness, right? All those things on the right that are demonized by people on the left and communists, all of those things can be deemed a mental illness by a government that is given the power to do that. So I don't know if you really want that smoke, Ben Shapiro. Maybe work on those principles a little bit, because you're reminding me a lot of the people on the left who like to give up their freedoms after a tragedy. All during the pandemic, all I heard was, yes, take away our right to go to work, take away our right to go to school, take away this, take away that, as long as I feel safe. So as long as Ben Shapiro feels safe, he's okay with the government saying this group of people doesn't get to own a gun. Let's talk about the fact that gender dysphoria is a hell of a mental disorder. And I'll say that to the day that I die. That, it's definitely a crippling mental disorder. It is not under even the most, forgiving definition, one that makes someone violent towards others. That's just not a trait of gender dysphoria. People who are mentally ill are more likely, of all mental illnesses, are more likely to be victims of violent crimes than the opposite, other way around. So if Ben Shapiro and the conservatives who are suddenly, we need to have a conversation about if trans people should own guns, come and take them. Come take them. I dare you to come try to take my firearms. It's not going to happen. How far do you want to take that? Do people with anxiety, which is a mental illness, should they not be able to own guns? People with depression, right? Pretty sure Steven Crowder has opened up about having anxiety. Should he not be able to have a gun? Because who knows what Steven Crowder might do? I don't know about that. I do know about that. That's stupid and an insane slippery slope. And any conservative worth their salt would not be having any honest conversations right now about how a demographic of people, regardless of how much they have, negative emotions about that demographic, should have their right to the Second Amendment and a firearm taken away from them. And I'm one bitch it's not going to happen with. Because the truth is, collective blame is actually what causes tragedies like this tribal collective mindset, because it's pretty clear now from the evidence of what we do know about this incident that Audrey Hale clearly had some negative feelings about Christians as a group, right? Christian upbringing, wasn't so nice to her, went to a Christian school, probably had some negative feelings, didn't like Christians, had a collective blame for all of her problems and her life struggles on Christians. This instinct to jump to blame a group when something bad happens is just not the business. It's illogical, it's inconsistent, it doesn't make sense, and no one should be responsible for the crimes and the sins of another individual who is not them. It doesn't make sense. I would like to have a conversation about the anti-straight, anti-white man, anti-cis sentiments that exist in trans spaces online, LGBT spaces online. If people don't think that can translate into some real life stuff, it can. This is one of the things that turned me off the absolute most when I first started my transition and I first started I went to a couple trans support groups, before I actually started my medical transition. And I was just, looking for advice, looking for guidance, hoping there was a community of people that were cool behind it, right? I was wrong about that. But what I noticed immediately was there was an encouragement to have an adversarial relationship with straight people, cis people, hate that word, with white men, that these are the cause of our problems. These are our oppressors. These are the people that are our enemies, right? It's really bad, and it breeds a lot of resentment. And you hear crazy things coming out of people's mouths, like, I hate men, I hate straight people, I hate cis people. And that's just normal to hear from that crowd of people. And all of that breeds online. So while these Reddit mods are taking down rational posts about gender dysphoria, about gender transition, and, you know, silencing the more rational among us, they are uplifting the crazies that want us to hate the outside world. I transitioned to be a part of the world. I didn't transition to be on the outskirts with this adversarial mindset, with this, that's them and this is me. No, I'm part of the world. And when I moved to Texas, I got so many people, and I saw it on trans Reddits and trans groups, and I got tweets and everything from people saying, I can't believe Blaire thinks she's going to move to Texas and not get hate crimed. These are real things that were said. I can't believe Blaire thinks that she's going to move to Texas and be accepted. Guess where I've never felt more accepted? Is Texas. Because again, this is real life. I've met so many straight, white, male, that's my entire friend group at this point, basically. And a lot of them actually didn't have positive views on trans people before becoming my friends. I've changed that for them. And if there was ever a drop in my mind of, like, you know, poisoning from the trans community that was still kind of there, even despite the fact that I've always resisted that, if there was ever a doubt that maybe I would be unsafe in a place like this, it was washed away immediately when I actually got to know folks and be part of the real world. And I feel like I'm maybe going off on a tangent here, but again, it's the fact that after a shooting, you have people on the right, not everyone, but a lot of people rushing to blame the trans community. And then you have the trans community rushing to blame, you know, Republicans. And it's like, the responsibility for what happened lays at the feet of Audrey Hale's cold, dead corpse. And for people who want to blame the guns, guess what? It was a gun-free zone, the school, which means there was no armed security to be there if someone decided to come with a gun. Something tells me, maybe I'm crazy about gun-free zones, that if you're willing to commit the crime of murder, you're not so much hung up on committing the crime of bringing a gun into a gun-free zone, right? The trans topic has become so disgusting recently, and it's not just because of trans people making the topic so vile anymore. It's everyone. It's everyone jumping in. And for whatever reason, this topic in particular, trans, attracts the most anti-pragmatic people, the least likely to come up with common sense solutions, and the most toxic, violent, and angry. Because there's a lot of reasons to be angry in this conversation. And people find their reason and they jump in there, and all they talk about all day long is trans shit. And it's this gross cycle going. And these are the two sides. Well, actually, there's like 5 sides on this debate, but no one's, when words don't work, people start enacting out violence. And that's what's so scary, right? Like, every day is a reminder for me to just stay in my house. Like, I don't need to be in somebody's Walmart. Not that I go to Walmart. I go to Target. But I don't need to be anywhere where someone clocks me as trans and thinks I'm in there trying to commit a crime. I don't need to be anywhere where these leftists who think that Republicans are enacting genocide against them, that are, you know, like coming to get them, see me and want to snatch me by my weave. I don't need to be anywhere but my house lately. And that's where I feel the most comfortable. Listen, we're going to get through this, but it really is a scary time. And I just want to do my part to sort of lower the temperature on this topic. And like, I know that I'm someone that has injected a lot of venom into this topic and has allowed my emotions to get caught up in like this topic and been angry at times, and maybe inspired other people to be angrier than they have to be, whether it's at me or at trans people or at Republicans or whatever. And I'm going to go forward, just really watch what I say, because it's very, not in a censoring myself way, but in a, just a tone way, in the sense of like, it's just gotten so ugly. We have a trans shooter now. I can't. I don't know the solution to mass shootings. I know that blaming people who didn't commit them is not the right answer. I know that taking away the rights of people who aren't ever going to commit anything like that is not the right answer. Like, coming and taking my guns is not a solution to the fact that this disgusting person did this, right? And that's illogical. And you would think conservatives would know that, but guess we're finding out some don't know that. I don't know how to make the trans community stop being crazy. I don't know how to integrate trans people into society. Sometimes I feel like I'm like walking through a dark tunnel trying to grab like my like insane cousins and like drag them through this like tunnel towards the light, and we're gonna get there, but they're really fighting me. You know what I mean? It's like, it's hard. But I just want to extend my heart to the families of these kids and the Nashville community. And it's just really bad. It's really sad. And I'm sorry my comeback after a month is not a happier video, but it's an important video. So I love you guys. Please follow me on Twitter and Instagram. That's where I post most of the time. And if I'm ever in another break like that, that's where I'm posting the whole time. My second channel, which is my podcast channel, which is coming out soon, the new podcast episode. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.